It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not.
Much of a difference. Peyton Pritchard happened. No, honestly, it's so funny. It's not. But this morning, I literally circled his name. It's like this guy comes in and he's the game changer.
On paper, the Milwaukee Bucks are one of the best teams in the NBA. They have a two-time MVP and former Defensive Player of the Year in Giannis Antetokounmpo, an all-NBA guard in Damian Lillard, and elite role players in Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and Bobby Portis. However, since firing two head coaches, one of which won them an NBA championship, and the other who was a rookie head coach who had a nearly 70% winning percentage, the Milwaukee Bucks have a top 10 losing record in the NBA and have reached an all-time low in the Giannis era. Whose fault is it? Is it all Doc Rivers' fault, or is he the scapegoat for what is one of the worst decisions in franchise history? So before we get to the content, make sure you check us out on TikTok and Snapchat for bonus content. And now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. We dominated opening night on Prize Picks, hitting on the Anthony Edwards free square and making an easy $75, and then making another $150 on my Hauser LeBron James picks. We had a lot of NFL success as well, all in all making about $400 over the past week. Now, if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you make an entry of $5 or more. I give away my picks for free on Instagram at TheFlightMike or Snapchat at FlightMikeSnap, and thank you Prize Picks for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Giannis Antetokounmpo was a superstar that had a reputation of knowing how to leverage his stardom in order to put pressure on the front office of the Milwaukee Bucks to ensure that positive change would be made. A team that's not going to back down whenever it comes to improving its chances to win an NBA championship. And the first instance of this came in the offseason of 2020. Giannis Antetokounmpo's contract was set to expire. And back then, we were photoshopping him in Golden State Warriors jerseys on this YouTube channel. And rightfully so. Giannis was very vocal about the fact that he wanted to win a championship. So Milwaukee needed to act quickly. And to be honest, Giannis's leverage worked. In November of 2020, the Milwaukee Bucks traded for Jrue Holiday. In a trade that at the time we were saying that the New Orleans Pelicans won actually. Less than a month later, Giannis Antetokounmpo signed an extension with the Milwaukee Bucks. The end result, the Bucks won an NBA championship. But Giannis made sure everybody knew that this didn't secure his future as a Buck for life. Remember, Giannis said this in 2021. One challenge was to bring a championship here, and we did. It was very hard, but we did. Very, very hard. I just love challenges. What's the next challenge? The next challenge might not be here. You see, in the 2020 to 2021 season, under third-year head coach Mike Budenholzer, the Milwaukee Bucks had won their first NBA championship in 50 years. Giannis was fully developed into the two-way superstar that we know and love today, or just a guy that drives into the paint and dunks, depending on who you ask. And he had an all-star supporting cast with Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, Bobby Portis, and Brook Lopez. What's more important is this Bucks team ended up finishing top 10 in defensive rating that season. And in the very next year, in 2022, the Bucks finished with a better record than the year prior, winning 5 more games than they did in 2021. However, they took a huge step back in the playoffs, just finishing short of the Eastern Conference Finals, losing to the Boston Celtics in 7 games. 2023 would be Coach Bud's final season with the roster, and they would end up finishing with 58 wins. This is the most the franchise has ever won since 2019. However, they would end up choking in the first round to the Miami Heat. Now, fans would be quick to point out that Giannis Antetokounmpo was injured during this series, and granted, the Miami Heat would make a run to the NBA Finals that year, but what was really telling about this series was we got this iconic post-game press conference from Giannis Antetokounmpo.
I just asked Bud the exact same question, but I'm curious for you. Do you view this season as a failure?
Oh my God. You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay. Do you get a promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, be able to take care of your family, to be able, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success, And if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it, I'm asking you a question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why you asking me that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. There's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful. Some days you're not. Some days it's your turn. Some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's gonna win. And this year somebody else is gonna win. Simple as that. We're gonna come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball. And hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures? No, it was not.
So time was ticking for the Milwaukee Bucks because Giannis Antetokounmpo wasn't an individual that was satisfied with just one championship. Giannis wanted more than just one championship, even though winning the championship for the Milwaukee Bucks was a significant achievement in of itself. So despite the fact that he was injured versus the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks decided to fire Coach Bud just 2 years after winning a NBA championship. And this wasn't even the craziest move that the Bucks made that offseason, considering the fact that they were about to make one of the most insane transactions in franchise history.
Big breaking NBA news. After months of speculation, Damian Lillard has been traded to the Milwaukee Bucks as part of a three-way deal. The Bucks get Damian Lillard, the Blazers get DeAndre Ayton, the Suns get Yusuf Nurkic.
Another important aspect of this trade was the fact that the Milwaukee Bucks had traded Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trail Blazers in order to make room for Damian Lillard in their backcourt. But one important thing that happened that they didn't anticipate was right after acquiring Jrue Holiday, the Blazers shipped him back across the country to the Bucks' Eastern Conference rivals, the Boston Celtics. But for now, at least, people didn't really care. The Bucks made a blockbuster trade. What's a more exciting trade? Damian Lillard to the Bucks or Jrue Holiday to the Celtics? I mean, hell, go back to my videos a year and a half ago. The video I made where the Bucks traded for Damian Lillard got more views than the video I made on the Celtics trading for Jrue Holiday. One acquisition is just significantly more splashy than the other. This is a trade that Giannis Antetokounmpo has wanted for years. To go alongside with that, Giannis literally got to handpick his next head coach. This is as a result of the pressure that the Milwaukee Bucks were feeling to appease their superstar, make sure he signs on the dotted line once his contract expired once again. So Giannis literally chose Adrian Griffin, who had been a star assistant coach throughout the NBA, and most notably was a large part of why the Toronto Raptors won an NBA championship in 2019. For the first 43 games of the season, one thing was certain: Milwaukee Bucks were not the defensive team that they had been with Jrue Holiday in the backcourt. And this isn't entirely on Damian Lillard, obviously, but it certainly doesn't help his case that when Jrue Holiday arrived in Boston, their defense had completely changed for the better, while the Bucks had severely regressed. And how could they not? You pretty much traded one of the best two-way guards in the game for one of the best offensive superstars in the game. But despite the offensive struggles, the Bucks were 30-13. Not the best record in the NBA for sure, but if they got hot for a month or two, they could definitely walk out of the regular season with the first seed in the Eastern Conference. Despite all of this, the Milwaukee Bucks decided to fire their first-year head coach right after beating the Detroit Pistons on January 22nd. Now, to the outside, this was a huge surprise, but to the Bucks locker room, this was a much-needed change. The signs were there from the very beginning of the season. I mean, just 5 days before the start of the 2023 NBA season, one of the Bucks' top assistant coaches, Terry Stotts, quit after a reported argument with rookie head coach Adrian Griffin. You have to bear in mind that losing Terry Stotts is significant. Terry Stotts was Damian Lillard's head coach with the Portland Trail Blazers for a bulk of his career. So a huge role that Stotts would have played on the Milwaukee Bucks was creating sets that Damian Lillard was comfortable in to get him going, to make sure that the Bucks' new offense would have multiple dimensions. Shortly into the season, after a blowout loss to the Atlanta Hawks at home, Giannis Antetokounmpo reportedly got angry after the game and began explaining in detail the problem with the Bucks' defensive scheme. Weeks after that, Giannis, Brook Lopez, and a few other teammates confronted Griffin on his usage of Brook Lopez defensively, which to be fair was a very valid criticism. The year prior under Coach Bud, Brook Lopez had finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, mainly due to Bud's usage of Brook Lopez near the rim, especially on pick and rolls. Under Griffin, instead of using Lopez's natural size and wingspan to protect the rim, he asked him to be more aggressive on pick and rolls, which evidently wasn't working. A few months later, after a blowout loss to the Rockets in early January, Giannis left no room for the imagination during a heated post-game press conference.
We have to be better. We have to play better. We have to defend better. We have to trust one another better. We have to be coached better. Every single thing, everybody has to be better. Everybody. It starts from the equipment manager. He has to wash our clothes better. The bench has to be better. The leaders of the team have to be more vocal. We have to make more shots. We have to defend better. We have to have better strategy. We have to be better. You know, and hopefully now it's what are we? January 6th. We have 4 months to get better, so let's see.
After a public bashing like this by your team's franchise player, it made a lot more sense as to why the Bucks fired Adrian Griffin less than 50 games into his head coaching career. But the man they replaced him with was absolutely shocking.
Doc Rivers, new coach of the second place Bucks. He actually had been consulting with former coach Adrian Griffin, which is interesting.
The Milwaukee Bucks hired Doc Rivers to be the franchise's third head coach in 2 years. And the results have not only been disastrous, but I really don't know why Doc Rivers took this job, because the moment he took this job, he acted like he was being a martyr for the NBA.
And I've never done this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. I can tell you that just from the day and a half. But it's going to be a challenge. I'm a coach. I love coaching. I will say I wasn't going to coach, though, ever, unless I wasn't just going to take a job. I have been contacted several times this season, and I wouldn't even take the call. So I was dead serious that if the right opportunity opened, I would listen. If not, I was fine. And I love coaching.
Why did you answer this call?
Because, I mean, come on, you know the answer. Giannis, Dame, really, that's the answer, right? What is it, 8 teams that have a legitimate shot? And I don't know if it's that high, but the Bucks are one of them, right?
I mean, this was just a recurring theme over and over again. It was almost as if Doc Rivers was trying to prepare the entire NBA and Bucks fans for him to fail.
Personally, I'll be honest, I told our owners when they called, I said, I think I don't understand why you're doing this, and they said, one of the things they said was, well, it doesn't matter, we've done it now, and we want you. And so that was a tough one. That's where you had the hesitation.
And to be honest, as a fan of the game, it was just so funny to watch Doc Rivers avoid accountability, whether it was blaming the medical team for the fact that Giannis Antetokounmpo was playing hurt.
I thought Giannis did everything he could, honestly, and I'm not kidding. There were times in the beginning of the middle of the third, I talked to Scott 3 different times, like I wanted to take him out of the game. I thought he was running on fumes. As a coach, you got to make a judgment call sometimes, and medical makes the call more. They kept saying he's okay, but I have eyes, and I just didn't like the way he was moving. And that's why I took him out the one time early. He kept asking to go back in. The trainer said he's fine, so he kind of stuck there. But I wish I'd have just said no, honestly.
Or blaming the travel crew for the fact that the Bucks were struggling on the road?
It's funny, I've actually been sitting back and watching everything. Not just our players, but our travel crew, everything. And I've made a lot of notes. I will say that. I won't share that. But we don't bring the necessary professionalism, seriousness on the road. And that's something that we can fix. That's something we're going to have to fix.
Do you feel like that just
gets cleaned up in the playoffs? Like, have you seen that in the past? That
Yeah, I'm not concerned. Yeah, the playoffs are a new beast, but I'm looking at it for the long run too. I mean, it's not just for now. Like, we got to be a better road team. If we're not, we're doing something wrong. You know, as a coaching staff, we have to figure out what we need to do different as far as practices and training. As a travel staff, not talking players, we may have to do something different there too, because something's missing. And everybody seems happy, you know, but except for me after a game, you know. And so I just think we're doing something wrong, and we have to figure that out.
So far, Doc Rivers has done worse than his predecessor, Adrian Griffin. In the last season alone, if you include the playoffs, Bucks went on to finish 20-24 under their new head coach. And in that span, yet another first-round exit, this time to the Indiana Pacers, who swiftly eliminated them in 6 games. Now, of course, Giannis Antetokounmpo was dealing with injuries, and Damian Lillard was as well to a certain degree. At the same time, Doc Rivers took over in the middle of the season, so honestly, what did you expect? So going into this season, fans were optimistic that Doc Rivers would finally have time to fix the Bucks defense, which has been struggling since the firing of Coach Bud and since trading Drew Holiday. But just 5 games into the season and the Bucks defense has been mind-blowing. I mean, we could have never expected this. The Milwaukee Bucks are the 7th worst defensive team in terms of defensive rating in the entire NBA. And when you listen to Doc Rivers, it's clear why. After an October 28th loss to the Boston Celtics, Doc Rivers went to the media and explained how Peyton Pritchard scored 28 points in 28 minutes while shooting 8 threes, which tied the Celtics record for the most by a player in a single game. And his answer is just awful.
Peyton Pritchard happened. No, honestly, it's so funny. It's not. But this morning, I literally circled his name. It's like, this guy comes in and he's the game changer. I don't know if you remember last year, we had a 6-point lead. He came in and changed the whole game. He did it again tonight.
Since that loss to the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks have lost to the Memphis Grizzlies, bringing their season record to 1-4. But most importantly, meaning that since firing Adrian Griffin, a coach who had nearly a 70% winning percentage with the team, the Bucks have been 20-27 if you include the playoffs. That is 7 games under 500. The Bucks now rank 29th in transition defense, 28th in transition offense, 30th in drives per game, and 30th in passes per game. Just a year and a half removed from firing Mike Budenholzer, who sure wasn't the greatest coach on the planet, but at the end of the day, he did know how to construct a defense. The Milwaukee Bucks are a shell of their former selves. Due to the heartbreaking start of the season, many fans are calling for the Doc Rivers experiment to end. But more importantly, there are rumors swirling that Giannis Antetokounmpo may force a trade out of Milwaukee.
I talked to several league sources across the NBA, and outside of Milwaukee, they're not happy. People are watching this start for the Bucks and really their brutal schedule of the next 10 days with a lot of glee. There's a rising sense of confidence that if things go badly in Milwaukee, that Giannis could be available for trade, would really force his way out of Milwaukee in the next year.
And although this could be speculation, Giannis Antetokounmpo has said it himself before. 2 weeks ago, in an interview with Sam Amick, Giannis Antetokounmpo stated that if we don't win a championship, I might get traded. Yeah, this is the job we live. This is the world we're living in. It's everybody. He goes on to state that his preferred trade destinations would be the Brooklyn Nets or the Miami Heat. And this is very important because not only would Milwaukee be losing their franchise superstar who brought them a championship for the first time in half a century, but if they trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, they likely would have to trade Damian Lillard, completely blowing up this franchise's roster and facilitating a full-scale rebuild. And to be honest, given the way that the Milwaukee Bucks started, that's not really a bad decision. Think about it this way, the Brooklyn Nets received 5 first-round picks and a pick swap in return for Mikal Bridges, and he was never even an all-star. So what would Giannis Antetokounmpo's value be in this particular instance? How many draft picks would be given up to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo, especially if he gets traded to a team that isn't the Brooklyn Nets or the Miami Heat? What if he gets traded to a contending team like the OKC Thunder? The Oklahoma City Thunder wouldn't even need to break up their big 3 to get Giannis. It would be so easy to go back and pin this whole thing on Doc Rivers, which honestly, he does share a large part of the blame, but how can someone so experienced in coaching not figure out how to have an average team with superstars like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard? How can a coach with a decade decades worth of coaching experience and a championship pedigree let a team regress so much after a rookie head coach had a 70% winning percentage with them? This could all be Doc Rivers' fault, or it could be the fault of Bucks general manager John Horst, who was the one who traded Drew Holiday in order to acquire Damian Lillard. The situation's very complicated, or you could point the blame finger on Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is one of the times where he used his power too aggressively, and as a result, the Milwaukee Bucks regressed after hiring Doc Rivers and trading for Damian Lillard. The situation is so complicated that honestly, it's likely a mix of everyone's fault. It's John Horst's fault for pulling the plug on Mike Budenholzer and not telling his superstar that he's incorrect in the way that this team should be constructed. It's Adrian Griffin's fault for not adapting his defense to fit the personnel he had on court, which resulted in his untimely firing. It's also Doc Rivers' fault for being unable to use his years and years worth of experience to make such a talented group of players succeed. I don't know what Doc Rivers was thinking when he was making adjustments to his coaching staff either. Did he really think bringing in Darvin Ham was going to improve things? It's likely that Doc Rivers is going to get fired soon, and hopefully whoever they bring in to replace him will perform better. Otherwise, the man that made the Milwaukee Bucks relevant will be the same reason they will no longer be relevant. But whose fault do you think it is? If the Bucks end up trading Giannis, which team will they trade him to? Or do you think they'll keep him until his contract expires in one more year?